Emotional balance is not the absence of emotions, but rather the ability to live in harmony with them. It is not about suppressing anger, sadness, or joy, nor is it about chasing after only the pleasant feelings while avoiding the uncomfortable ones. True balance comes when you understand that emotions are like waves and the ocean cannot exist without them. To seek balance means to learn to surf these waves without being drowned by them and without clinging to them when they rise. Emotions are signals, messengers, and guides, but when they become masters, life becomes reactive, unstable, and restless. To live with emotional balance is to step into a position of inner stability, where you are able to feel deeply, but not be consumed by the depth of feeling. Many people spend their lives at the mercy of emotions, being tossed around like a small boat in a storm. One word from someone else can cause days of anger. One memory can cause years of sadness. One success can bring momentary joy that fades, leaving emptiness behind. This instability happens because the emotions are not seen for what they truly are, temporary movements of energy within the body and mind. When a person believes that emotions define who they are, imbalance becomes natural. They rise and fall with every passing mood, mistaking the weather of the mind for the climate of the self. But emotions are not the self. They pass through you, just as the wind passes through the trees, just as clouds pass across the sky. To move toward emotional balance, the first step is awareness. To be aware of what you feel in the very moment you feel it, without judgment and without attachment, is already a form of freedom. Anger may rise, but instead of allowing it to explode outward or burying it inward, you recognize it as anger. You name it silently, and in the simple act of recognition, the intensity often shifts. Sadness may appear, but instead of being lost in the story that sadness tells you, observe it. You acknowledge it without immediately reacting. Awareness brings space, and within that space lies balance. The second step is acceptance. Many people resist their own emotions, believing they should not feel what they feel. They label emotions as good or bad, strong or weak, useful or useless. But emotions are not moral, they are natural. To reject an emotion is to fight against yourself, and in doing so you create more conflict inside. Acceptance does not mean indulgence. It does not mean acting out every emotion that arises. It simply means allowing the emotion to exist without resistance, like allowing a guest to enter and leave the house without trying to lock the door or chase them away. The third step is regulation. Once awareness and acceptance are present, you begin to develop skill in directing how emotions move through you. Breath is a powerful tool for this. A deep breath in, a long breath out, and already the nervous system begins to calm. Meditation, movement, and mindful practice all become ways to regulate the emotional currents. When the storm is strong, you do not try to fight the waves, but you adjust your sails, you anchor yourself, and you let the storm pass through. Regulation is not control in the sense of domination. It is the art of guiding the flow without letting it overwhelm you. Emotional balance also means cultivating equanimity, the ability to remain steady in both joy and sorrow. Life will bring both, and neither lasts forever. The balanced person does not chase joy desperately nor reject sorrow completely. They experience both fully, yet they remain rooted. Joy is enjoyed but not clung to. Sorrow is felt but not feared. Equanimity is like the mountain that does not move though the seasons change around it. Snow may cover it, flowers may bloom on it, rain may fall on it, but the mountain stands unmoved. Another aspect of emotional balance is the recognition of how emotions influence relationships. When imbalance rules, anger spills over onto others, sadness creates distance, excitement may lead to rash actions. But when balance is present, emotions are expressed with clarity and care. Anger can transform into firm boundaries without hostility. Sadness can open into vulnerability and connection rather than isolation. Joy can be shared without attachment. Balanced emotions allow relationships to deepen without being suffocated by emotional extremes. The path to emotional balance is continuous. It is not a state that is achieved once and then lasts forever. It is a practice, an art that requires daily attention. Some days the waves will be calm, other days the storm will be fierce, but each moment of awareness, each moment of acceptance, each act of regulation strengthens the foundation of balance. Slowly, emotions become companions rather than masters. You walk with them instead of being dragged by them. Emotional balance also reveals the deeper nature of the self. When you no longer identify fully with your passing emotions, you begin to sense that beneath them lies a quieter space. This space is not cold or empty, it is spacious and alive. It is the ground from which emotions arise and to which they return. To rest in this space is to discover stability that does not depend on what you feel in the moment. It is like finding the stillness of the ocean beneath the surface waves. When balance is cultivated, emotions transform from burdens into guides. They inform without overwhelming. They enrich life rather than control it. They become part of the full spectrum of human experience without stealing away peace. Emotional balance is not about becoming emotionless. It is about living with emotions in a way that brings harmony rather than conflict, clarity rather than confusion, depth rather than instability. It is a lifelong practice, but each step on this path brings greater freedom inside and greater understanding of what it means to live with the heart and mind aligned. Self-respect is not something we can borrow from the outside world, nor is it given to us by society. It is cultivated silently within, like a seed that grows only when it is nourished with discipline, clarity, and truth. Without self-respect, life becomes an endless search for approval, a restless cycle of chasing recognition and bending ourselves into shapes that please others. Self-respect is the ground upon which all growth stands, and boundaries are the walls that protect this ground. If the ground is weak or the walls are absent, everything we try to build in our lives will eventually collapse. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many believe they are tools of separation, barriers that push people away. In reality, boundaries are the clearest expressions of self-respect. They are not walls of rejection but lines of clarity. They are signals silently announcing, this is what I value, this is what I will allow, this is where I end and where you begin. Without boundaries, relationships lose balance, energy leaks away, and the self becomes diluted by the demands and expectations of others. When you begin to establish boundaries, you are not shutting people out. You are teaching them how to interact with you. You are showing them the shape of your energy, the rhythm of your life, the limits of your capacity. And this teaching does not require harshness or aggression. It requires firmness grounded in calmness. A boundary spoken with inner stillness carries more strength than one shouted with anger. To practice self-respect is to acknowledge your own worth without waiting for others to confirm it. It is to recognize that your time, your energy, and your peace are sacred. Too often, people hand these over freely, thinking that self-sacrifice will bring them love or acceptance. But when you continuously give without measure, you do not become noble. You become depleted. A person who is drained cannot serve others well, nor can they stand strong in their own life. Self-respect allows you to give from fullness rather than from emptiness, and boundaries protect that fullness from being stolen or wasted. There is a great strength in saying no, not a no, born from bitterness, but a no that arises from alignment with your values. Every time you say no to something that violates your boundaries, you are saying yes to your own dignity. Every time you honor your own space, you reinforce the message that your inner world matters. This, yes, is not selfish. It is the foundation upon which meaningful connections can be built. For only when you respect yourself can you genuinely respect others. Boundaries also teach discipline. They require you to be consistent, because a boundary that is declared once but ignored the next time is not a boundary at all. The discipline of self-respect means you uphold your standards even when it is uncomfortable, even when it costs you approval, even when it makes others question your choices. It is easy to respect yourself when everyone agrees with you. It is harder when your self-respect challenges the expectations of those around you. But the strength of your life will always be measured by how deeply you remain rooted in your truth, regardless of the winds that try to sway you. There will be resistance when you begin to live with boundaries. People who benefited from your lack of them will question you, criticize you, or attempt to guilt you back into the old patterns. They are not your enemies, they are simply responding to the shift in balance. You do not need to argue with them, nor do you need to convince them. Your boundary is not for them, it is for you. And the more you practice holding it, the more natural it becomes, until it is no longer something you consciously enforce, but simply who you are. Respect for the self does not mean you become rigid. Flexibility and compassion must still remain, but they should not come at the expense of your inner stability. You can bend without breaking. You can give without depleting. You can listen without losing your own voice. Boundaries are not a prison, they are a structure. Within this structure, there is freedom because you know where you stand. And within this freedom, your energy is no longer wasted in battles of confusion, but directed toward growth, creation, and purpose. Ultimately, self-respect and boundaries return you to yourself. They strip away the noise of external validation and remind you that you are whole as you are. They free you from the endless task of pleasing everyone and ground you in the steady task of honoring your truth. They shift your relationships from dependency to balance, from expectation to clarity, from neediness to mutual respect. Growth is not an achievement that you can hold in your hands. It is not a medal that you receive once and then hang upon a wall. Continuous growth is a movement, a stream, a current that does not stop flowing. It is a process that unfolds with every breath, with every step, with every challenge that meets you in the day. To speak of continuous growth is to speak of a life that never hardens into certainty, a life that is willing to remain open, flexible, curious, and unafraid of change. The nature of life itself reveals this principle. The tree never stops reaching toward the sky, its branches stretching wider and its roots digging deeper. Even when storms come, bending its form, even when winter arrives and leaves fall away, the process does not stop. Beneath the surface, unseen by the eye, there is still movement, still energy, still growth. If nature refuses to remain stagnant, why should the human being imagine that growth ends after a certain point? Growth cannot be completed, because life itself is incomplete until its final breath. Continuous growth demands humility. To grow continuously is to admit that you are not finished, that you are not perfect, that there is still something more to learn, more to refine, more to discover within yourself and in the world around you. The mind that believes it already knows closes the gate to growth. The mind that believes it is already strong stops training. The spirit that believes it has already arrived refuses to continue walking. Humility is the soil from which growth arises, because humility keeps the door open to the next lesson, the next challenge, the next transformation. Growth is rarely comfortable. The seed must break apart to allow the sprout to emerge. The muscle must be strained in order to become stronger. The mind must be stretched with new perspectives in order to expand its vision. Comfort keeps us within the known. Growth pushes us into the unknown. To grow continuously means to accept the discomfort of not being certain, the challenge of change, and the effort required to keep evolving. In this discomfort lies the very energy that awakens hidden potential. One of the greatest obstacles to continuous growth is the illusion of finality. Many people believe that once a goal is achieved, the journey ends. They imagine that success is a final destination, that wisdom is a completed state, that transformation is a single event. But each ending is only another beginning. To achieve something is not the conclusion, it is the opening to a new responsibility, a new level of awareness, a new opportunity for refinement. Growth is not a straight path upward, but a spiral, always returning to familiar lessons with deeper understanding, always cycling through change with greater depth. To walk the path of continuous growth requires attention to the present. Growth does not occur only in great moments of change. It is hidden in small, daily practices, in the discipline of thought, in the cultivation of the body, in the care of the spirit. Just as water shapes stone not with force but with persistence, growth is shaped not by dramatic leaps but by steady consistency. The daily commitment to refinement, the repeated choice to learn, the constant awareness of one's own actions, these are the real foundations of growth that does not end. Continuous growth is also the art of letting go. To grow, one must release outdated beliefs, harmful habits, and limiting attachments. What once served you may no longer serve you now. The skin of the snake must be shed. The leaves of the tree must fall. The old must give way for the new. Clinging to what is no longer alive blocks the path forward. Growth requires space, and that space is created when one has the courage to release. There is also the necessity of patience. Continuous growth is not immediate, and it cannot be rushed. Just as a flower blooms in its own season, growth unfolds according to its rhythm. Impatience tries to force results, but continuous growth respects the natural pace of transformation. The river does not demand to reach the ocean instantly. It follows its path with persistence. Likewise, growth is measured not in sudden leaps but in steady progress, often invisible until much later when one looks back and sees how far the journey has gone. Growth is not only individual but also collective. To grow continuously is not only to refine oneself, but to contribute to the growth of others. When a person evolves, their energy influences those around them. When the mind becomes clearer, the words become kinder. When the spirit becomes stronger, the actions become more meaningful. Continuous growth spreads outward, like ripples in water, touching those who encounter it and inspiring them to walk their own path of expansion. To understand continuous growth is to recognize that there is no final form. You will always be changing, always be shifting, always be invited to go deeper into yourself and to reach further outward into the world. The journey is not about arriving but about moving, not about finishing but about continuing. Continuous growth is not an event you experience once. It is the very nature of living, breathing being. The human being is a process, never fixed, always flowing, always transforming in response to the universe around them. And the universe within them, the confidence, is often misunderstood as a loud declaration of self, a display that others cannot ignore, a way of taking up space so that the world will know you are there. But true confidence does not require volume, nor does it need constant proof. It lives quietly within, like a flame that burns without the need for attention, and yet its warmth is felt by anyone who comes close. Graceful confidence is the merging of strength with humility, power with gentleness, presence with composure. It is not the kind of confidence that shouts, but the kind that radiates naturally, making no effort yet leaving an undeniable impression. The roots of graceful confidence grow deep in self-awareness. When you know who you are without constantly needing to prove it, you carry yourself differently. Every step becomes lighter, every gesture more intentional, every word carefully chosen, not because you want to impress, but because you are rooted in your own center. You are not pushed around by the noise of the world or the expectations of others. Instead, you move steadily with clarity, like a river that flows toward its destination, unconcerned with obstacles because it knows it will find its way. Graceful confidence is born not in comparison, but in acceptance. The world teaches us to measure ourselves against one another, to look outward and question whether we are enough in the eyes of society. But this form of confidence is fragile because it depends on external approval. Graceful confidence does not ask for validation. It is the quiet knowing that you are already enough, not because of titles, possessions, or recognition, but because you exist as you are. From this state, confidence becomes effortless. It is not borrowed from applause or constructed from achievements. It is steady like a mountain, unmoved by the winds of opinion. Strength without grace can easily become arrogance, and grace without strength can become timidity. The union of the two creates balance. This is why graceful confidence is rare. It requires discipline of both the mind and the heart. Discipline to not let ego take over, and discipline to not shrink into insecurity. It is the balance of standing tall without looking down on others, of moving forward without pushing anyone aside, of expressing truth without the need to dominate. It is walking into a room without needing to be noticed, yet leaving an impression simply because your presence carries a natural ease. The path to graceful confidence begins with stillness. When you are constantly rushing, constantly seeking, constantly comparing, your mind has no space to settle. But when you return to stillness, you begin to notice the strength that has always been present within you. In silence, you realize you do not need to perform to prove your worth. In solitude, you discover that your value does not diminish when no one is watching. This inner stillness becomes the soil in which graceful confidence takes root, allowing it to grow without force. Every challenge in life offers an opportunity to practice this quality. When others misunderstand you, you do not need to argue endlessly to defend yourself. When recognition does not come, you do not need to chase it desperately. When success arrives, you do not need to wave it loudly before others. Graceful confidence means that you trust the unfolding of your journey, that you carry yourself with poise, whether the moment is bright or dim. It is a state of mind where both praise and criticism lose their ability to shake you because your anchor lies deeper than fleeting opinions. This kind of confidence transforms the way you interact with the world. People around you feel at ease because your energy is not demanding or restless. They sense calmness in your tone, clarity in your actions, steadiness in your presence. Without forcing anything, you inspire trust and respect. Those who meet you may not remember every word you speak, but they will remember the way you carried yourself. With dignity, with patience, with an aura that did not need exaggeration. That is the silent strength of graceful confidence. It also requires a deep trust in life itself. When you do not cling tightly to outcomes, you allow events to flow as they are meant to. This surrender does not weaken you, it frees you. Confidence rooted in grace does not mean you control everything. It means you trust yourself to face whatever arrives. You no longer need certainty before moving forward. You step calmly, knowing that your inner foundation will support you even if the path is unclear. This trust creates a glow that others recognize even if they cannot name it. Graceful confidence is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to who you truly are. Beneath layers of doubt, fear, and conditioning, there is already a natural ease waiting to surface. When you release the need to constantly prove, when you stop searching for worth outside yourself, when you no longer let ego or insecurity pull you to extremes, what remains is a quiet yet powerful self-assurance. It does not waver when challenged, it does not inflate when praised, it does not collapse when ignored. It simply continues to shine steady and calm, like a lantern that guides without noise. Compassion and understanding are often spoken of as if they are soft qualities reserved only for moments of kindness or comfort. But in truth, they are forces that cut deeper than strength built from control or power built from domination. They are not signs of weakness, but signs of great clarity. To live with compassion is to allow yourself to see beyond the surface of people, beyond their actions, and into the hidden struggles they carry. To live with understanding is to train your mind to pause before judgment, to recognize that what appears outwardly is often only a small fragment of an unseen story. When we move through life without compassion, we move through life blind. Every interaction becomes rigid, every conflict becomes a battle, and every mistake becomes a punishment. But when compassion enters, something shifts. The sharpness of situations softens. What seemed unbearable becomes tolerable. What felt impossible to forgive becomes forgivable. Compassion is the bridge between the self and the other. It does not mean you agree with everything, nor does it mean you must approve of what is harmful. It means you are willing to see the human being beneath the behavior, the pain beneath the anger, the wound beneath the mask. Understanding works hand in hand with compassion. It is not enough to feel warmth toward others without also seeking to comprehend them. To understand is to listen not only with the ears but with the heart. It is to place yourself, even briefly, in the position of another and ask, what would I feel if I stood where they stand? This question opens the doorway to empathy, and empathy is the soil in which compassion grows strong. Without understanding, compassion can become shallow sentiment. Without compassion, understanding can become cold analysis. Together, they form a balance that heals both the one who gives and the one who receives. Compassion and understanding also demand that we turn inward. Too often, people extend kindness to others yet withhold it from themselves. They judge themselves harshly, punish themselves for mistakes, and replay regrets until the weight becomes unbearable. Yet, if you cannot show compassion to yourself, how deeply can you truly show it to another? If you cannot understand your own weaknesses, how authentically can you understand the struggles of those around you? The practice begins within. It begins with sitting silently with your own flaws, your own fears, and saying, even here I choose not to abandon myself. There is strength in that inward compassion. It dissolves the cycle of self-criticism and allows growth to emerge from acceptance rather than from force. To understand yourself is not to justify every action or to remain stagnant. It is to recognize your patterns, your triggers, and the hidden roots of your choices. When you do this, you move from living blindly to living with awareness. And awareness is what allows transformation to happen without resistance. In relationships, compassion and understanding are what create true connection. Two people may spend years together, yet remain strangers to each other if they lack these qualities. But when compassion is present, barriers fall. When understanding is cultivated, trust is built. Misunderstandings no longer escalate into resentment because both sides have learned to pause and to ask not, how do I prove I am right? But instead, what is it that you are truly feeling? This shift changes the entire energy of interaction. In communities and societies, the absence of compassion and understanding leads to division. People separate into groups, defend their own narratives, and shut out the voices of others. But when compassion is practiced on a collective level, the walls begin to crack, prejudice weakens, hostility loses its fuel. Understanding one another's pain becomes more important than proving one's own superiority. This is how healing enters not just individuals, but entire cultures. Compassion is not pity. Pity looks down, compassion looks across. Pity distances, compassion connects. Compassion is the recognition of common humanity, the reminder that suffering is not isolated to one but belongs to all. When you understand this, arrogance dissolves. The illusion of separateness fades. What happens to another is no longer irrelevant to you, for you see that their story and yours are woven into the same fabric of life. There is also discipline in compassion. It is not always easy to show understanding, especially when hurt or anger is present. It requires restraint, patience, and the ability to silence the voice that wants to lash out. It requires the humility to accept that your perception is limited and that the other side holds truths you may not yet see. Compassion is not about being passive. It is about choosing a higher response even when the lower one tempts you. It is about remembering that every action you take plants a seed, either of more pain or of healing. Compassion and understanding also extend beyond people. They reach into how we treat animals, the environment, and the world itself. To exploit without thought, to consume without balance, to destroy without care is a sign of absence of compassion. To understand that every living thing has its place and that our existence is interconnected with theirs is to act with wisdom. The more compassion we cultivate for the world, the more balanced our lives become. True compassion is silent. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It flows naturally like water, quietly nourishing everything it touches. True understanding does not boast of how much it knows. It listens, absorbs, and remains open to learning more. Together, they form a way of being that is unshaken by conflict, unbroken by division, and unhardened by pain. They are not qualities to be practiced occasionally, but a discipline to be lived daily. In every thought, in every word, in every action, a feminine energy is often misunderstood, overlooked, or confined within cultural frameworks that reduce its essence to appearance, nurturing roles, or softness alone. Yet, feminine energy is far more expansive. It is presence, intuition, depth, and receptivity. It is the rhythm of nature itself, flowing like water, transforming like the moon, and expanding like the infinite space that holds everything. To understand feminine energy is to understand life's ability to create, sustain, and evolve. It is not a concept limited to gender. Rather, it is a universal force that resides within every human being, waiting to be recognized and expressed. Presence is the language of feminine energy. When one embodies presence, there is no need to force, no need to prove, and no need to demand recognition. Instead, presence becomes a silent authority, one that radiates without words and influences without effort. This presence is magnetic. It draws toward itself what is aligned and repels what does not resonate. In this way, feminine energy teaches that strength does not always shout. It often whispers, and yet its whisper is powerful enough to shift the course of lives. To access feminine presence, one must first slow down. Our world moves in a constant rush, pushing people to chase outcomes, accumulate accomplishments, and prove worth through external measures. Feminine energy, however, thrives in stillness. It is felt in the pause between breaths, in the unspoken understanding between two souls, in the way one's being fills a room without needing to dominate it. Slowing down does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming attuned. It is a conscious choice to listen more deeply, to oneself, to others, and to the environment. This listening creates a space where intuition can speak, where wisdom can emerge, and where connection can blossom. Feminine energy is intuitive, and intuition is a form of intelligence that goes beyond logic. Logic dissects and categorizes, but intuition perceives wholeness. It reads the unspoken, senses the unseen, and guides one toward harmony. When one ignores intuition, the path often feels forced and heavy. When one honors intuition, there is flow even in difficulty. Feminine presence is inseparable from this intuition. To cultivate it requires trust, trust in the body's signals, trust in the heart's nudges, and trust in the unseen patterns that guide existence. This trust is not blind, it is experiential. It grows as one practices stillness, reflection, and openness. There is also a creative power in feminine energy that cannot be overlooked. Creation does not refer only to the physical act of birthing new life. Creation manifests in ideas, art, movements, and visions that alter the course of humanity. Feminine presence nurtures these seeds of creation by holding space for them to unfold naturally. Where masculine energy often seeks to direct and structure, feminine energy allows unfolding, gestation, and organic emergence. This balance is necessary. Without presence, creation becomes rushed and shallow. With presence, creation carries depth, beauty, and meaning. Another quality of feminine energy is receptivity. Receptivity is not weakness. It is the ability to remain open, to allow life to give, and to welcome abundance without resistance. In a world conditioned to glorify constant doing, receptivity can feel foreign or even threatening. Yet, without receptivity, one cannot truly experience fulfillment. Feminine presence teaches the art of receiving not only material things but also emotions, experiences, and wisdom. This openness allows transformation. What is received is not held passively, it is transformed within and expressed outwardly as growth, compassion, or insight. Feminine energy is also deeply connected to cycles. Unlike linear progress, cycles honor the natural ebb and flow of life. There are seasons of growth, seasons of rest, seasons of abundance, and seasons of letting go. Feminine presence understands these cycles and adapts without resistance. To embody this is to realize that nothing in life is permanent, yet everything has its rhythm. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, just as tides rise and fall, so too does energy move through phases. Accepting these rhythms allows one to live in harmony rather than in constant battle with time and change. Power in feminine energy does not come from control, but from alignment. When one is aligned with intuition, cycles, and presence, there is a grounded strength that no external force can shake. This strength is not displayed through aggression, but through unwavering calm. It is a power that absorbs chaos without losing balance. It is a power that uplifts others simply by existing fully and authentically. Feminine presence is not about seeking validation, but about embodying truth so completely that validation becomes irrelevant. In relationships, feminine energy becomes a force of connection. It creates spaces where vulnerability is safe, where authenticity is honored, and where communication transcends words. This does not mean giving endlessly or losing oneself in the service of others. Rather, it means standing in presence so firmly that others are reminded of their own essence. Feminine presence nourishes not by sacrificing itself, but by radiating wholeness. Ultimately, feminine energy and presence invite us to remember a way of being that the modern world often neglects. It reminds us that life is not a race to be won, but a flow to be experienced. It reminds us that silence can be more powerful than noise, that softness can be stronger than rigidity, and that presence is more influential than constant striving. It reminds us that to truly embody power is not to impose, but to align. And when one aligns with this energy, the external world begins to shift, not through force, but through resonance,